We now come to the backbench debate on St Patrick's Day and Northern Irish affairs. Adam Jogee to move.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I beg to move that this House has considered the matter of St Patrick's Day 2025 and Northern Irish affairs. And I'm grateful to all colleagues who sponsored this debate application and to the Backbench Business Committee for granting us time on the floor of the Chamber. The cross-party support for this debate is a testament to the close bond between the UK and Ireland and this House's acknowledgement of Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom. Madam Speaker, I refer members to my declarations of interest. I serve on the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee, ably chaired by my honourable friend from Gower, and I'm particularly grateful to the team who support the committee's work, Stephen, Kay, Karen, Joe and Chloe. They were all excellent people. And I'm also the chair of the Ireland and Irish and Britain All-Party Group. Madam Deputy Speaker, the issues before the House this afternoon are very close to my heart. As anyone who knows me will tell you, I've always had a great love and affinity for the good people of Northern Ireland and indeed the Republic of Ireland, and for what could be described as a healthy appreciation for St Patrick's Day this year and all years. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we are joined in the gallery by former Deputy Mayor Councillor Liz McShane, a councillor in Folkestone Hythe and a North Down native, and we were to be joined by Mr Michael Lonergan, the political supremo at the Irish Embassy, but alas, he is, I think, lunching. Michael has done more for British-Irish relations in recent years than anyone else I know, and we'll miss him when he returns home later this year. And I should say, Madam Deputy Speaker, I haven't met anybody who so easily can have breakfast with the DUP, morning tea with Sinn Féin, lunch with the Liberals, afternoon tea with the Tories, pre-dinner drinks with the SDLP, the Ulster Unionists, and then dinner with Labour, and then get up and do it all again the next day. I'll give way to the honourable lady.
I appreciate very much the honourable gentleman, an almost neighbour, giving way to me, and I congratulate him on securing this debate. I apologise, I can't contribute fully to it, but I am taking part in the next debate, so I will go and prepare for that. But I just wanted to join him in his tributes to Michael. I actually have just seen Michael in Portcullis House. I know he's in the building. I'm sure he'll be in the gallery at some point soon. But he has been an absolute stalwart. And I know, as Vice Chair of the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly and previously Co-Chair, just how much work Michael does to promote UK-Irish relations, and we will miss him very much.
I'm very grateful to the right honourable lady, as she says, a near neighbour and a former Secretary of State, both for her interest in Northern Irish affairs and commitment to them, and her very fulsome and appropriate tribute to Michael, and I thank her for making it. Madam Deputy Speaker, for nations across the globe, St Patrick's Day is a day of celebration, acknowledgement and togetherness. A day, although it rather feels like a month nowadays, where the world can be described in two ways: those who are Irish and Northern Irish, and those who wished they were. The noble Lord Brennan, a man born to an Irish father and a Welsh mother, told me last night that as St David's Day is March the 1st, he wasn't prepared to concede a month to celebrate St Patrick's Day unless it started around March the 8th. I told him that as long as St George's Day is safe in April, I was happy to let the debate go on. Now, St Patrick's Day's global popularity is perhaps most obvious in the city of Chicago, which famously dyes its river green every year to mark this important milestone. And whilst I appreciate the sentiment, I'm sure we've all had enough of the rivers and lakes in our country, whether it's the Thames outside this place or Lough Neagh, turning the most unusual of colours. Much of this, though, Madam Deputy Speaker, is closer to home. I'm very proud of my own family roots in Northern Ireland. My late grandmother's father was of good, solid County Down stock, and I do want to note the passing of his last remaining child, my great-aunt Margaret Wilson, who died at the grand old age of 105 last week. The blend of Irish and English is clearly a recipe for a good, long life. My own roots parked to one side, one of the best decisions I've ever made, other than being born to a good Staffordshire woman in my mother, of which I had little influence, was to marry my brilliant, wonderful wife, although I had very little influence on that too. She had to say yes. But my wife is a woman of and from Northern Ireland, but who calls the ancient and loyal borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme home.
Would my honourable friend give way on that point?
I will happily give way to my neighbour.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. My own constituency, neighbouring constituency of Stafford, has a small Irish community now, but for some time in the 19th century, Stafford was a source of refuge to a number of Irish nationals who worked in the area. While some moved on, a significant number of those stayed and put down roots into Staffordshire. With that in mind, would my honourable friend agree with me that the contributions of Irish community, past and present, have really enriched Staffordshire's cultural and economic life?
I thank my neighbour, the member for Stafford, in whose constituency my mother was born for her very timely, important intervention, and I couldn't agree more. Madam Deputy Speaker, many people from the island of Ireland moved to Newcastle and Lyme, to Staffordshire, as my honourable friend says, and to coalfield communities up and down our country to work in our mines and in our metal manufacturing industries, settling with their families and bringing with them a sense of culture, new ideas and, of course, great crack. But many Irish women particularly came to England to work in our National Health Service. And I want to acknowledge Louise Jones, who alongside Grania McPolin and Niha Doshi has written a wonderful book titled Irish Nurses in the National Health Service, which I read over the weekend and which gives such voice to the contribution of Irish nurses in our beloved National Health Service. Many businesses and organisations in my constituency would not exist without people from the island of Ireland. And many of my constituents, some of my staff included, are proud to have very strong Irish roots. I think of people like Rosie Monkman, who works at Keele University and lives in the Westlands, my Labour predecessor, the former Member of Parliament for Newcastle Lyme, Paul Farrelly. I was out door-knocking Clayton the other day, and in quick succession I met Shannon, I met Maura, and then, of course, the wonderful Bob Bell, and many, many more. And I think of the Irish staff in this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, from Catherine Jackson, the restaurant manager here in this place, to the lovely Betty Thompson in the terrace cafeteria downstairs, strong Irish women keeping this place going. Irish Heritage described the contribution of the Irish to cultural life in the United Kingdom as incalculable. The cultural contribution of both the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland is beyond doubt, and I'll give way to the member for Hammersmith.
I congratulate him on his speech, and he's right to highlight the unique contribution the Irish diaspora has made to cultural life in the UK. For 30 years, the Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith has served the population of West London and far beyond. Under its current team of Centre Director William Foote, Culture Director Ross Scanlon and Chairman Peter Power-Hines, it's gone from strength to strength in its cultural, community and education programmes. I count myself lucky as a member of one of the largest Irish populations to represent such an outstanding venue for the best of Irish culture, and my honourable friend, of course, all members are welcome there at all times.
Adam Jogee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm grateful to my friend, the member for Hammersmith. I've been to Hammersmith Irish Centre many times before. He speaks rightly of the contribution that they make, not just to people of Irish descent in London, but actually up and down the country. There are also Irish centres in Birmingham, Manchester and other parts of the United Kingdom too, and he makes a very good point, and I congratulate all those at the Hammersmith Irish Centre for the work that they do. In Northern Ireland, we have great wordsmiths like the poet Seamus Heaney, the playwright Brian Friel and Anna Burns, the author of Milkman, all of whom have achieved international acclaim in both the English and Irish languages. Musicians like Van Morrison, although he was a little bit mean to my honourable friend, and I do mean friend from Southampton, who has the pleasure of representing the community my wife was born in and where my parents-in-law live. But it wasn't just Van, it was notably the Ulster Scots folk music movement, who have had real popularity right across the United Kingdom and indeed the world. And of course, much beloved TV shows like Channel 4's Dairy Girls or even Game of Thrones, both of whom owe Northern Ireland a great deal. Anyone who's been to Northern Ireland will have seen its natural beauty up close. It's the home of Giant's Causeway, the Ring of Gullion, Slieve Donard, which towers over Newcastle County Down, and an act of solidarity with God's own constituency of Newcastle under Lyme. Of course, I must also mention the contribution that the island of Ireland has made to one of our most beloved institutions, the Great British Pub. From Ballycastle to Bletchley, Coal Island to Camden, Fermanagh to Falkirk, Port Ballantrae and the Honourable Member's constituency over there to Pembrokeshire, Templepatrick to Tyneside, from Ballybean to Golders Green and everywhere in between, who doesn't like a good pint? Whether it be a pint of Guinness Zero or Guinness Clear, otherwise known as water, the approach and the culture has deeply influenced our pubs, and we are all the better for it. And I think, Madam Deputy Speaker, pubs across Newcastle Line, whether it's the Westby Tavern in Westby Park, the Potter's Wheel just up from Bradwell Lodge, the Sneed Arms in town, where I was last Saturday having a cold drink, and the Hand and Trumpet in Rhine Hill pubs across my part of the world, and I know many others know how to pour a good pint of Guinness. Madam Deputy Speaker, it was in Belfast shipyards, particularly Harland and Wolff, that many vessels from the Royal Navy and the Merchant Fleet were built, including the famous HMS Belfast. In both World Wars, Irish volunteers fought in the British Army, in the Royal Air Force and in the Royal Navy. Men and women from across the island of Ireland helped build the earliest tunnels for London Underground, as well as more modern work such as the Victoria Line, which gets me from Euston Station when I come down on Monday morning to this place. And many Irish people continue to move to our United Kingdom to work in our National Health Service, education system and more widely our public services. And I'd like to take this moment to pay tribute to them for their hard work and the contributions they make to our country. Does my honourable friend want to give way? Oh. I'll take Pembrokeshire first.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. As my honourable friend knows, I represent the constituency of Mid and South Pembrokeshire, which is closer to Dublin than it is to London. Does he agree with me about the importance of maintaining and enhancing trade links? And he will be aware, of course, of the ferry from Pembroke Dock in my constituency to the port harbour of Rosslare, and the importance of enhancing those trade links in order that we can achieve the government's mission of economic growth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for Mid and South Pembrokeshire, and I'd like to congratulate him and his wife on the imminent arrival of their first child in the coming days. We all wish him and Poppy well. But he makes a really important point, because internal trade within our United Kingdom and with our closest neighbour, the Republic of Ireland, would benefit all of us, and does benefit all of us, and the stronger we do that, the better for my constituents and his, and he raises a very good point. And as I will happily give way to the member for Bournemouth.
Thank you to my honourable friend for giving way. I'm proud to be the son of a Tipperary man, to be one of a very large Irish family who came over to the UK in the 1950s to provide an addition to our economy, tearing down some of the buildings that were bombed in the war and helping to rebuild Britain, adding to that contribution that he is talking about with many Irish people working in the National Health Service right now. We also know the pain and suffering as Irish people of Irish football. One of my formative experiences was seeing the 1994 World Cup effort, and I still haven't quite recovered from that. So would my honourable friend join me in wishing the Irish football team every success in the future, but also in commending 8 Sharp, who are an Irish and Celtic music band based in Bournemouth, who are providing fantastic music and cultural events across BCP.
Adam Jogee.
Thank my honourable friend. He's wearing the England colours, so I will happily send best wishes to the Irish football team, so long as England isn't on the pitch. But as we give thanks, Madam Deputy Speaker, to those who made a contribution to our country, it's only right that we acknowledge John Paddy Hemingway, a pilot in the Battle of Britain who recently passed away at the age of 105. Mr Hemingway was a volunteer who joined the RAF and flew Spitfires in the Battle of Britain, not because of where he was from, because of the ties that bind us together, whether they be geographical, cultural or historic, because those values are now shared and more important than ever. Mr Hemingway was one of 36 Irish pilots who fought in the Battle of Britain, including Wing Commander Brendan Paddy Finucane, who was one of the RAF's most successful fighter aces in the war. They are a reminder to us that Britain did not stand alone against fascism as it rose on the European continent throughout the Great War. And despite our often complicated shared history, it is a shared history nonetheless, one that has seen the fates of all the people who live across these islands, whether that be in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, or in the Republic of Ireland, bound together time and time again. Madam Deputy Speaker, it would not be right to ignore the history of these islands in a debate such as this. Nobody wants to dwell on the past. We must be honest, though, that war, death, division played a significant role in the story of British-Irish relations. But how lucky are we that times have changed? Northern Ireland, for all of its political imperfections, but who are we to pass comment on other people's jurisdictions, politically speaking, now has functioning devolved government led by the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, and the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly. It has access to the UK internal market and access to the European Union. It's on the tourist hit list and has made history. And I do want to acknowledge the very strong women from both unionist and nationalist traditions who have politically shown real leadership. I think of our honourable friend, the member for South Belfast, the noble Baroness Ritchie, Lady Herman, formerly of this parish, alongside the former First Minister, Baroness Foster. And I know that my mother-in-law, if she were watching, and she may be, would be very clear that you should never mess with a woman from anywhere on the island of Ireland. Political relations between Ireland and the United Kingdom have never been stronger, and that was evident in Dublin earlier this week, Madam Deputy Speaker, where the Select Committee met a range of stakeholders, from former President Mary McAleese and her husband Dr Martin McAleese, former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Bertie Ahern. It was clear that ties east and west between Dublin and London are better and stronger, and my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, deserves much praise for his commitment to the British-Irish relationship, including hosting the first St Patrick's Day reception at Downing Street just last week. And as we talk about British-Irish relations, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the British Ambassador in Dublin, Paul Johnson, and his wife, Nicola. Paul will be returning home later this year as his posting comes to an end, and it's only fitting that the House acknowledges his service to our national interest. Today's debate is not about the Constitution or borders, or to just discuss the party political nature and situation in Northern Ireland. But we can't forget one of the greatest political developments in our shared history, the Good Friday Agreement. A peace deal unlike no other, it remains the gold standard in diplomacy and one of the most significant peace processes in modern European history. After those terrible decades of tragedy and conflict, we now have peace on these islands, because all sides came together, they compromised and they negotiated, and there, Madam Deputy Speaker, lies a lesson for all of us. As the Prime Minister said on his first visit to Dublin since the election, the relationship between our two countries has never reached its full potential, and it is time to unlock that potential. This new era of cooperation and friendship is all the more critical at a time when we must stand together with our closest allies who share our values. And I'd like to go back to Mr. Hemingway, and I touched on him earlier, and quote him on what he feels is his secret to achieving a long life, a secret I think my wife and some of the members of this House may enjoy. And Mr. Hemingway said, "I can't say don't drink, I can't say don't fly aeroplanes, I can't say don't shoot and get shot at. I've done everything and I'm an Irishman. The only advice I can give is to be Irish." Madam Speaker, in this case, I think we can apply Northern Irish, British and everything in between too. Since my election as the Member of Parliament for Newcastle-under-Lyme, I've made clear my personal affection for the royal family and particularly Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. On her first historic visit to the Republic of Ireland, at the state banquet in Dublin Castle, she began her speech with the words, Uachtaráin agus a Coide, President and friends. The British head of state, standing in Dublin, speaking words in Irish, showed how much times had changed. Her late Majesty went on to say, and I quote, "Many British families have members who live in this country, as many Irish families have close relatives in the United Kingdom. These families share the two islands. They've visited each other and have come home to each other over the years. They are the ordinary people who yearn for the peace and understanding we now have between our two nations, and between the communities within those two nations, a living testament to how much we have in common. These ties of family, friendship and affection are our most precious resource. They are the lifeblood of the partnership across these islands, a golden thread that runs through all our joint successes so far and all we will go on to achieve. Madam Deputy Speaker, for all the challenges that remain, for all that we have yet to do, family, friendship and affection, as Her late Majesty put it, will see us through. Happy St Patrick's Day, Madam Deputy Speaker, and here's to Northern Ireland and to the bonds of friendship between the Republic of Ireland and our United Kingdom.
The question is, as on the order paper, I call Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Newcastle-under-Lyme for securing this debate. I feel I must check his register of interest, though, to see whether he's on the board of Irish tourism or Northern Irish tourism, because a marvellous tour we had of so many wonderful places in Ireland there. And I want to identify with all of the sentiments that he expressed. I do apologise for missing the start of his speech, but I think he was referring to Michael from the Irish Embassy, would that be correct? Yes. So I want to endorse his remarks and also to pay tribute to all the embassy staff here in London. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise as a proud Irishman to speak in this debate celebrating the life and legacy of the late 4th or 5th century man that we know as St Patrick. But be aware there may have been a number of people from the so-called Dark Ages who might have at least contributed to the legacy we now know. There's absolutely no doubt that it was Irish monks and missionaries who, throughout the period that we call the Dark Ages, kept Christianity alive, spread the good news and taught so much to so many through the early versions of what we now call universities. The efforts of St Patrick's disciples, maybe contemporaries, are felt to this day. Columba and Drosten, who had such an influence in Scotland, my own church is named for St Drosten, while another local church celebrates Columba. You will have heard of the Book of Kells, but you may not have heard of the Book of Deer, a handwritten copy of the Gospels, written a little earlier, but it's now in the Cambridge University Library, but it was written in the northeast of Scotland in a local village. I was raised within sight of the slopes of Schlemish in County Antrim, where, according to his own account, Patrick spent some 6 years as a shepherd, having been kidnapped by Irish pirates. They allegedly came from Dalriada, a Scottish kingdom ruled by the MacDonald clan. Now, there is much uncertainty about where Patrick was born. Was he Roman? Was he Welsh? Who knows? And to be honest, does it really matter? Patrick apparently escaped back home and years later now as a cleric, dreamt that the people of Ireland were calling him to return and walk amongst them. There are many stories about his life in Ireland. The one that always appealed to me was how he broke the law by lighting a pyre on the slopes of the hill of Tara in County Meath, a privilege reserved to the High King of Tara at the time, as a fire in that spot could literally be seen for many, many miles in many counties across Ireland. But so impressed was said king by St Patrick that he allegedly converted on the spot. Patrick is credited with teaching Christianity to the Irish people using the shamrock, with fasting for 40 days on top of Croagh-Patrick in County Mayo, and thus earning the right to judge the Irish at the end of time on the Day of Judgment. And I think the member for Newcastle Underline may well have secured his future there. Patrick's legacy requires little acknowledgement from me other than to credit the many other honourable members who have spoken so eloquently today in this debate. So my contribution is to briefly recall some personal St Patrick's Day memories from the past 67 years. It was always a day on which one was released from the usual Lenten pledges. So as children we fogged the chocolate and the sweets into us so hard that we almost made ourselves sick. Later it became a day on which we would make the pilgrimage to Dublin, not necessarily for the St Patrick's Day parade, but for the All-Ireland Club Championship finals in football and hurling, which were played at Croke Park. And I'm pleased to say that my own local hurling team, the Cahullians of Dunloy, contested that hurling final on no less than 5 occasions, an amazing feat for a small village in Northampton. On other occasions I attended the school's Rugby Cup final at Ravenhill, a tradition still carried on to this day on St Patrick's Day. So as Father Tedrow said, for me it's an ecumenical matter. There are many other memorable moments on this day, but a very special one is sitting in a bar in Bariloche in Argentina, listening on the radio to a live performance by my singer-songwriter daughter, Aislinn, at the Irish Centre in Camden, in London, several thousand miles away. And so in conclusion, I say to honourable members, let us recognise and celebrate the life, the legend and the legacy of this man or men that we call St Patrick, not least because it means so much to the more than 500,000 people who said in the last census that they were Irish and living on this island. Thank you, Madam Deputy.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle under Lyme, for securing this important debate today. And if I may say to newer colleagues, this is always a good debate, and I have to say I really enjoyed the one we had last year in celebrating St Patrick's Day and our wider Irish diaspora. As a Member of Parliament for Luton South and South Bedfordshire, I'm always very pleased to recognise and celebrate the strong and proud Irish community in my constituency. And Luton is a diverse and vibrant town made up of individuals with global ties from around the world, and the Irish connection that many hold is an intrinsic part of that social fabric. From supporting the economic growth of our town, working in Luton's manufacturing industry and building homes, churches and schools, to their contribution to arts and culture, the Irish diaspora in Luton have contributed an immense amount and continue to do so today. The post-World War II boom created a huge period of regeneration and building in the UK. Irish immigrants came in their thousands to work on motorway construction and in manufacturing jobs, and Luton was no exception to this trend. And from 1951 to 1961, the Irish population in Luton more than tripled from 2,000 to more than 7,000. And this was primarily due to increased economic opportunity in the town, with Vauxhall Motors expanding in the 1950s and creating thousands more jobs, at one stage becoming the single largest employer in the town and employing 22,000 people across Luton and Dunstable by the 1960s. And if I may just take this opportunity to thank all the workers at Vauxhall in Luton, as the final vehicles come off production this week due to the sad closure of the plant. There were further job opportunities across Luton at Electrolux, manufacturing household appliances, and at Skefco, a ball bearing manufacturer. And our Irish population are a core part of our workforce and play a key role in workplace trade unions. And I pay tribute to the local trade union representatives in my constituency who are of Irish descent and continue to advocate for fair pay and working conditions today. There were also significant employment opportunities for Irish women, and with the creation of the NHS in 1948, many Irish women came to Luton to work at the Luton and Dunstable Hospital, fulfilling the need for more nurses as Luton's population grew. Indeed, the recently released Irish Times bestseller, Irish Nurses in the NHS, an Oral History, features the stories of 3 women from our local Irish community, Betty Halfpenny and Rosanna Anderson, who came to the UK to be nurses, and Rosalind Burke, a radiographer who worked at the L&D Hospital for over 50 years. And I was very pleased to attend the launch of the book at the Irish Embassy in London in February and celebrate their contributions to our town and our wider healthcare system. As the Luton Irish community grew, so did their lasting mark on our town's landscape, social scene and culture. And in my constituency of Luton South and South Bedfordshire, building the Holy Ghost, St Margaret's and Sacred Heart churches, to name just some of them, some of the Catholic churches in our town, highlighted the Irish community's desire to contribute something lasting to Luton. And the building of the associated primary schools followed, providing education from 5 to 18, including Cardinal Newman High School in my honourable friend's constituency of Luton North. That opened in 1968 and prides itself on being a school of the community, built by the community. And these churches, schools and social spaces continue to be hubs at the heart of the community for the Luton Irish in the present day. And when we talk about the influence of Irish organisations, I can't forget the vital role played by Luton Irish Forum, a charity promoting Irish identity, culture and heritage. They also provide a range of support and wellbeing services to improve the quality of life for the Irish community and the wider population of Luton. This includes welfare support, debt advice, housing, mother and toddler groups, tea and chat sessions, arts and games clubs, and Irish dance and music clubs. And Luton Irish Forum also recognised the economic contribution of our Irish community, and in November held their first successful Irish business brunch, bringing together current and long-standing Irish businesses, supporters and other local connections to highlight the opportunities for businesses within the Luton Irish Forum and their extended network. And as our Labour government place a key focus on our mission for growth, networks such as these will play a vital role on a local level, and I look forward to seeing our Luton economy thrive in years to come. And of course, Luton Irish Forum play a key role in Luton's annual, and if I do say so myself, hugely impressive St Patrick's Day Festival. And I was delighted and enjoyed myself thoroughly when I joined the 26th annual celebration earlier this month. And it was an amazing parade with flags from every county of the Emerald Isle proudly on display. And in a truly Luton style, the parade was also led by a Bhangra mash-up drums with Irish music and dancing, and it was just a beautiful representation of everything Luton is about, coming together to celebrate everybody's cultures. And of course, we can't forget St Bridget, the female patron saint of Ireland. And in Luton, we celebrate her annually too, with Luton Irish Forum holding an afternoon tea and celebrating the Irish women in our community. And this year, the theme was Irish wedding traditions, and that includes the role of the matchmaker, the cladder ring, and the bride's handkerchief being kept for her first child's christening bonnet. So I'd like to end as I began, thanking our Luton Irish community for their enormous contribution to our local economy and their important work to enrich our community, ensuring our Irish connection in Luton remains strong from generation to generation. And the connections between Luton and the island of Ireland continue. And while before it may well have been the ferry, nowadays it's London Luton Airport that provides the main transport link that allows the enduring connection to remain strong, so that, you know, tying our first, second, third and even fourth generation Irish Lutonians back to Dublin, Cork, Knockall, Kerry and indeed Belfast, to name a few, and allowing those family ties and cultural influences to transcend the distance. And our town is all the better for it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I say it's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady for Luton South and South Derbyshire, Bedfordshire, who has so eloquently spoken with passion about the contribution of the Irish diaspora and particularly her community in Luton South and South Bedfordshire. A lot of Souths being spoken about today, and we're talking about the south of Ireland as well and their contribution to the success of our own country, the United Kingdom. And it's a pleasure to take part in this debate today, and I thank the honourable member for Newcastle-under-Lyme for proposing a St Patrick's Day debate and to talk about Northern Irish affairs. And I'd like to commend him for the years of support he's given to British-Irish relations. And I remember when he was the mayor of Haringey, and I remember St Patrick's Day, and he flew the Irish flag for St Patrick's Day and celebrated that important occasion in that London borough. And I thank him for that. Madam Deputy Speaker, if I may say that the celebration of St Patrick's Day is a great feast day of the year, and that's a time when we must all come together as one great British family to celebrate St Patrick, who is the patron saint of the island of Ireland, whom is shared by both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And that's a very important distinction to make. Some people think St Patrick is purely the patron saint of the Republic of Ireland, but as my cufflinks show with the Cross of St Patrick that I'm wearing today, St Patrick is also very much the patron saint of Northern Ireland as well. And I'm also pleased to say that St Patrick's Day is also my birthday. I was very pleased to be born on the 17th of March, so it's a very special day for me. And I have family connections with Ireland. They run deep. On my mother's side, my great-grandparents were Dempseys and O'Learys, although I'm very English, I have to say, but I'm proud of my Irish ancestry.
Except that you're a mongrel.
As many of our Ulster members will know, St Patrick was a great saint whom we should aim to emulate. Fundamentally, this day reminds us of a figure who championed the Christian faith, a steadfast believer who came from the mainland to Ireland in order to cure the souls of natives. His mission: he was a man of solemn sincerity, keeping his promise to God to convert the non-believers. He was also clearly a man of great forgiveness and reconciliation, as earlier in his life he had been enslaved by the Irish, and so subsequently he came with a mission to save their souls for eternity. From the life lessons of St Patrick's sainthood, I believe we can clearly learn a great deal. Yet there are many things we could, in this country, could do as a nation to mark this very important day with gravitas, the gravitas I believe St Patrick's Day deserves. And so I would strongly submit that St Patrick's Day should be a national bank holiday alongside all the other feast days of our kingdom's patron saints. St George's Day, of course, on the 23rd of April, which will be soon, the 1st of March for St David's Day, and of course the 30th of November for St Andrew's Day. Not only would this be firmly in line with the position of Anglicanism as the unchallenged state religion, but would reinforce the importance of all four corners of our nation. So too would the resurrection of the Order of St Patrick, which has shamefully been allowed to fall into abeyance for many decades, but I believe remains a sovereign order of the United Kingdom. And I hope the Minister will take that back as a consideration for something to be restored. What a wonderful idea that would be if the Royal Order of St Patrick could be restored. And there are many people, I'm sure, would be worthy of that order should His Majesty decide to restore that order for use within the United Kingdom, and perhaps a wider family of Irish people who have contributed to relations between our two nations. And so I encourage the Minister to give serious consideration to that. The recognition we afford to days such as the feast day of St Patrick is not only about dressing in green, donning shamrocks and drinking Guinness. It is in fact about how we value the native people of these islands, their heritage, traditions and culture, which must be reflected in all our great British traditions under one king and one flag. Indeed, it is my view that the Irish, Ulster Scots and Anglo-Irish are all very much part of our family within our great British Isles. All the people of these islands are deeply intertwined in every area of life, from blood and history to literature and music and, of course, sport. We are fundamentally inseparable and should aim not only to embrace our historical connection, but enhance it now and into the future. To this aim, I was immensely proud to have chaired the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly from 2016 to 2022, and followed by my honourable friend, we have worked together on that for many years. I am pleased to have recently been reappointed to BIPA. I believe that the role of the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly is fundamental to advancing our shared prosperity economically, culturally and politically, and I will continue to work with colleagues from all legislatures throughout the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly area and executives to strengthen bonds between the inseparable nations and, of course, the territories of the British Isles: England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, the Isle of Man, the bailiwick of Jersey and the bailiwick of Guernsey, and not forgetting Alderney and Sark. Today, I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must focus more on bringing the four home nations of the United Kingdom and Great Britain, Northern Ireland together, and reversing the constitutional backsliding that I believe has occurred with the British internal market. So I have great sympathy with the Honourable Member for North Antrim on that area of policy. And despite this, the inseparability of the mainland and Northern Ireland remains clear in so many facets of national life: blood, culture and king, but to name only a few. And so I commend His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen for their outstandingly successful visit to Ulster recently, and praise the good people of Northern Ireland for providing such a heartening welcome and a demonstration of local pride. And I'm sure their Majesties will treasure their memories for years to come. The Crown has also received a wonderful reception in the Republic of Ireland in recent years, with Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's most notably visiting Dublin for the state visit, of course, in 2011, and speaking Irish to the assembled dignitaries. This was not only a characteristic example of Her late Majesty's exemplary good humour and reconciliatory nature, but also the warmth and goodwill between all of our peoples. The Republic of Ireland, Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe are our friends, but we can be much closer, fully realising that we are one family that share a unique group of islands in all spheres of national operation. Indeed, Ireland could do much more work themselves, alongside her British brother and her loyal northern neighbour, in recognising that shared heritage and advancing shared values and goals on the global stage. Ireland would do well to emulate countries such as Australia, Canada and New Zealand. I hope that one day, perhaps soon, the people of the Republic of Ireland might choose to take their rightful place in the family of the Commonwealth of Nations, taking our deep neighbourly relations to the next level to the benefit of both partners, and, I believe, having a bounteous benefit to global politics. May I also take this opportunity, Madam Deputy Speaker, to send our greetings to the good people of the British Overseas Territory of Montserrat, who also celebrate St Patrick's Day. St Patrick is also their patron saint, and they have most wonderful celebrations on the 17th of March. And so finally, may I say that in my own constituency of Romford, there are many people with heritage connected to the island of Ireland. There are in fact several Roman Catholic churches and community groups in my constituency and throughout the London Borough of Havering, which continue to cherish and celebrate the history and family connections with Ireland and celebrate the feast of St Patrick's Day as a marker of this proud heritage. Although I have much sympathy with and support for the Anglican Church of Ireland, for which I have huge respect, as Irish member of the Anglican Communion, it is only right that I acknowledge the wonderful Irish Catholic community in my constituency. I would like to pay special tribute to St Peter's Roman Catholic Primary School in Dorset Avenue, Romford, and the headmistress, Mrs Jenny Waterfield, who I've known for over 20 years. I pay tribute to her for the leadership of this wonderful school in my constituency and wish her well for, I believe, which is going to be her impending retirement later this year. I'd also like to give special note of thanks to the Roman Catholic Church of St Edward the Confessor, and especially to Father Dominic Howarth, who has led his parish from strength to strength, most notably with their splendid architectural improvements, providing a beautiful space for worship for the whole of our local community in Romford. In the Romford constituency, we also have the wonderful St Patrick's Roman Catholic Primary School and the Church of Corpus Christi, along with the Collier Row Catholic Club, all of whom serve the community in Collier Row and the whole of the North Romford area of my constituency. St Patrick's School welcomed me one year for my birthday on the 17th of March, where I was absolutely thrilled to take part in their St Patrick's Day celebrations and hear the children sing Irish songs and watch them take part in traditional Irish tap dancing. And in Hornchurch, which is also partly within my constituency, our community is served by St Mary's Roman Catholic School and St Mary's Roman Catholic Church in Hornchurch Road. And I'm always delighted to visit their annual Christmas fair and other celebrations throughout the year. I cannot also forget our Irish club in Hornchurch Road, the Iona Club, which is always at the heart of social gatherings and a truly welcoming place for members of the whole community. Although I have already mentioned the Anglican Church of Ireland, of which I am a great supporter, it would be amiss not to further underline the great contribution of the Anglo-Irish and Ulster Scots in Romford, of whom there are many. Originally, like St Patrick, they came from mainland Ireland, and now they have come home. They remain my steadfast supporters and are some of the most loyal people in the kingdom. Although I have to admit there is limited orange tradition within my constituency, although I'm wearing an orange tie today by no coincidence, but I often frequent the popular orange establishment in my constituency, the Orange Tree Public House in the village of Havering Atty Bow. Madam Deputy Speaker, to conclude, we must do more to mark St Patrick's Day on the mainland and encourage invigorated relations between all in these British Isles. With such deeply rooted blood ties between our islands and all that it entails culturally and politically, we must not let our relations dwindle, but rather raise them to new heights, standing shoulder to shoulder like never before, to greet shared opportunities and challenges alike. A very happy, belated St Patrick's Day to one and all.
Dawn Butler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to congratulate my honourable friend for Newcastle Underline for securing this very important debate, and I'm proud to be one of the signatories to this debate. Brent East is, I think I have the largest Irish constituency in the whole of the UK. So I am very proud of that, Madam Deputy Speaker. And every year I do ensure that I go and have a Guinness no matter where I am. I don't particularly like Guinness, to be honest. I know. I once when I was in Ireland, asked for blackcurrant in my Guinness, and they wanted to throw me out of the pub. It was like a cardinal sin. So I learnt my lesson there. I also actually found out the Kilkenny Castle. I think that I own a little part of that, maybe, being from the Butler family. So I do hope if anybody's watching this debate and they want me to claim part of Kilkenny Castle, I'll happily come along and do that. When my father and my mother, when they came to this country, they talked about the coldness when they arrived, and they weren't just talking about the weather, they were talking about some of what they encountered when they went to try and rent property, and the signs that said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And it was that, in the face of that kind of injustice, that my parents formed very strong links with Irish friends. They were all faced with the same kind of discrimination. And from that, relationships grew. And I think that is why, and especially when you find that in Brent, because I have a very large West Indian community too, the West Indian community and the Irish community are very, very close. They share a love of fairness, they share a love of music, and they share a love of laughter. And the thing is that this year's celebration in Brent was held at the Leary Constantine Centre, and the member for Romford mentioned about Montserrat, and it was also celebrated with the Montserrat High Commission. And that was a celebration that's probably still going on, to be honest. They were having such a good time. But it does show you that unity is strength, and when we are the majority, then those people that seek to divide us with whatever rhetoric they care to use, then they cannot win. And it's important that we stand together. The Irish concentration in my constituency is around Cricklewood, Kilburn and Wembley, and we've heard today from other members in the House that lots of the women came in and they worked in the hospitals, they worked on the buses, and they worked in caring roles. And there was no difference to the constituents of mine in Brent. And the men, a lot of them worked in the construction industry. And in Brent, we have one of the largest merchants, MP Morgan's. They're one of the largest in the world. They've been going for 50 years with the founder, Mick Moran. And it's a very successful business of which I am very, very proud. We've also got other Irish people in Brent that make us very proud. Colin Maloney, who was there last week at the celebration, he was our Brent first Irish mayor, and boy, did we have a good time when he was mayor. He's the only mayor that I think, I kind of found it a little bit hard keeping up with. Then we've got Mike McGing, he's the Brent Irish Advisory Director. We've got the Irish World newspaper that is actually based in my constituency of Brent. I've been there for many, many years. We lost a very wonderful businessman, Tony McGovern. He died last year. And we had a nice visit last year from Ireland's former female president, Mary Robinson. She came to Brent. Brent is literally, if you haven't got it by now, the place to be. And our next mayor will be one of our youngest mayors. He's also proud and Irish, Ryan Hack. And I'll say, Madam Deputy Speaker, some of my best memories, especially sort of in the trade union movement, is singing Irish songs that last forever and ever and ever, like for hours. But it's one of the most beautiful things, like singing an Irish folk song to the wee hours of the morning. And one of my mentors, Mary Turner, was an Irish dinner lady in the GMB. And she spent her whole life talking about free school meals and making sure that children do not go hungry in schools. And I know that she'll be sort of looking down on us and being very proud that a Labour government has been able to support and deliver that, as well as the Mayor of London. So I just wanted to wish everybody that's listening today a very happy belated St. Patrick's Day, and for us to all recognise the history of our commonality and what makes us human, and ensure that we continue to be united as a society.
The chamber seems empty without the member for Strangford, but I call the next best Jim Alistair.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Indeed, I am surprised that since this is a debate not just about St. Patrick's Day, but about Northern Ireland affairs, that I am the only member from Northern Ireland in the House to participate in this debate. I think that is a pretty poor situation. Yes?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just gently put to the member for Northampton two things. One, the member from Aberdeenshire is from Northern Ireland, so we've got to correct the word slightly when you say you're the only one. He's the only one from Northern Ireland. And a number of colleagues representing Northern Irish constituencies have sent apologies, had to go home to no doubt tend to their constituents. But I want to put on record that they did make that point.
Strangford, right this minute, is over at Westminster Hall. He's double booked himself, as the member would. So, Jim Alistair.
The member for Strangford is in residence in his second home. I am, though, the only member representing a Northern Ireland constituency, if that satisfies the honourable member. Of course, St. Patrick is a very important figure historically. No doubt, over the generations, he has been even more greened than he ever was. But I do find it a little rich in irony that, being a Brit, that St. Patrick is celebrated with the enthusiasm by the Irish that he achieves. I think it is important, in talking about St. Patrick, to recognise and remember that his primary contribution was in terms of bringing the Christian message, a message that fallen man needs reconciliation with God, and that can come only through the mediation of the Lord Jesus Christ. And that was his essential message to Ireland and elsewhere. It is also right, of course, that there are many intertwining relationships between the various parts of Ireland and the various parts of Great Britain. And one can think of some of the standout indications of that, not least in the currency of the Second World War, when the ports of Northern Ireland were so vital to the battle in the Atlantic, to defending our freedoms. And indeed, Northern Ireland welcomed the first American soldiers to be encamped, and they ran to many, many thousands in those years. And at the same time, sadly, the Republic of Ireland held to a strategy of non-involvement and of neutrality. And I think, therefore, it is always right to remember that in Great Britain's greatest hour of need, United Kingdom's greatest hour of need, it was in fact the people and country of Northern Ireland that came swiftest to their aid. And whereas in the Irish Republic the government formally and quite shockingly expressed regrets at the death of Hitler, it was from within Northern Ireland that the contribution was made that the then Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, so generously recognised. Of course, the relationships are multifaceted. And it's easy to be cosy and sentimental about those relationships. And there's a place for that. But I do have to say to this House, there is also a dark side to the relationship. Because with the initiation and the conduct and the carrying forward of the brutal IRA terrorist campaign of the 1970s, 80s and 90s, the undoubted source for much of that was the aid and assistance given from the Republic of Ireland. The historical records show that the provisional IRA was first armed by those associated with even government in the Irish Republic. And those are factors that I, representing constituents who lost family members at the hands of the IRA, cannot easily, nor should we, forget. We talk about cooperation, and cooperation is good, but it is also a salutary fact that at the peak of those terrorist campaigns, we did not have the cooperation we needed. Between 1969 and 1981, there were 81 extradition applications for wanted terrorists in respect of terrorist deeds committed in Northern Ireland. 81 applications to the Dublin authorities. Only one was granted. And of course, the truth was that many of the cross-border terrorist attacks were carried out from the Irish Republic. Amongst the most infamous, that of the greatest loss of military life, the attack at Warren Point, where the bomb that killed all those parachute and other regiment soldiers was triggered from the Irish Republic. And that was but a reflection of what happened time and time again. And yet, when cooperation was sought, it might have been nice words, but there was very little action, as indicated in the matter of extradition. So I think we do have to inject into the relationship and reflections upon it some of the cold realities that cost lives of British citizens in Northern Ireland. And I think that that is something which cannot be written out of our history. And indeed, debating Northern Ireland affairs, it is surely impossible, if we're to do it properly, to ignore the incredible constitutional situation that Northern Ireland is now in. Namely that, though I stand in what is called the Sovereign Parliament of the United Kingdom, there are 300 areas of law pertaining to Northern Ireland where neither this Parliament nor the devolved Parliament can make the laws, because those powers have been surrendered to a foreign parliament, that of the European Parliament, covering much of our economy. And in pursuit of that, we now have the obscenity of an Irish Sea border. Shortly to be, in a moment, shortly to be reinforced with even the insult of a parcels border. That a granny can't send our new grandchild in Northern Ireland a teddy bear without registering it through the processes of the Irish Sea border. That businesses in my constituency, small engineering businesses or small craft industries that depend upon their supplies to come by parcels from their age-long suppliers in GB, that those parcels will now be subject to the demands of the foreign EU border, that those who send them must be a member at cost of the Trusted Trader Scheme. They must make a customs declaration. They must record what's moving, where it came from, where it's going. And yet this is said to be a United Kingdom. It's a United Kingdom, sadly, partitioned by a border in the Irish Sea. And the point I'm coming to is this, that much of that is at the behest of the authorities in the Irish Republic. It was the Taoiseach of the Irish Republic who pushed and cajoled and forced the EU into their irrational demands. The EU, at the beginning of the protocol negotiations, was prepared, indeed they originated the idea of mutual enforcement to control the movement of goods. But sadly it was the Taoiseach Varadkar who insisted, who saw the opportunity of partitioning the United Kingdom, who insisted on the border being pushed where the IRA could never push it in their 30 years of terror, insisted on it being pushed to the Irish Sea. It was the Dublin government that made those irrational demands and repudiated the very thing that made that unnecessary, namely mutual enforcement. So yes, lots of nice fuzzy sentiment about how the Irish Republic and the UK have relations, and in many areas they are good. But there is a reality that there has been a malevolence to the detriment of Northern Ireland as well. Yes, I'll give way.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and I may be getting on a bit now, but I don't recall some of the accusations that he's making about the role of the Irish government in terms of the negotiations that followed the Brexit vote. But what I wanted to ask him, to clarify for the purpose of the record, is it not the case that many unionist elected representatives, some of them in this chamber, encouraged their voters and their supporters to vote for Brexit in June 2016? Did they not?
They did, but they didn't get Brexit. That's the fundamental. The question on the ballot paper was, do you want the United Kingdom? It was not, do you want GB to leave and leave Northern Ireland behind? But that's what we got, because we were left in their single market under their customs code. And never forget, their customs code decrees GB a foreign or third country. Hence, its goods must pass through the EU border because Northern Ireland is treated as EU territory. That was not on my ballot paper. That was not what I voted for. But that's what the last government left us, and that's what this government seems reluctant, even though it's not what they brought about. That seems what they are unprepared to do anything about. So, yes, let's celebrate the international relations that you would expect between neighbours, but let's not get so bleary-eyed that we do not recognise the realities of the history and the legacy of the history. And speaking of legacy, we talk about the wonderful relationship from the Irish Republic. Who is taking the United Kingdom to the European Court of Human Rights? The government of the Irish Republic, over a Legacy Act that this government isn't even pursuing. So I think that in any relationship, you look for a two-way cooperation. And you certainly don't look for trying to exploit a situation to achieve the dissembling of part of your neighbouring country. And that, sadly, is what has happened in respect of the Brexit negotiations. Thank you very much.
Final backbench contribution, Liam Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle-under-Lyme, for securing this debate and for all his efforts and leadership in championing the Irish in Britain and advocating for cooperative relationships with Northern Ireland for many years. Lofela Pádraig Honadív, happy St Patrick's Day. In this debate about St Patrick's Day, I want to put on record that it is no longer a day, but a season.
Exactly.
It starts somewhere in early March, around the time of my birthday, and carries on for a full month. I think today's debate marks the end of it. I have what I call green fatigue at this stage of the month, where I don't want to see any more St Patrick's paraphernalia, and certainly no Guinness for quite a while. And it has once again been a fantastic season, though, celebrating the best of the Irish community in Britain. I'd like to point to my registry of interests as well. I am chair of the Labour Party Irish Society, very proud to be chair, and have been for the past 5 years. We represent the Irish community in Britain and champion strong cooperative relationships between Ireland and Britain and Northern Ireland as well. And 2 years ago, I think someone touched on the Good Friday Agreement, I was very proud to have opened the Mo Molam Studio for Cinematic Arts at Ulster University in Derry, one of many great figures from our party who contributed to that peace agreement, which is in the DNA of the Labour Party as well. And I'm very, very proud of that. I know lots has been said about Guinness. I just want to say as the sponsor of Choice R refreshments, Jameson are also available to people. But in fact, it is Tato crisps that actually, I think, worth noting, where more than a crisp, actually, it's a way of educating people. It's a way of educating people about Ireland and Irish politics. A lot of people don't know there are two types of Tato crisp. There is from the north and from the south, or as I call them, the Nordy Tato and the Free Stato. It's always a good way of explaining to people the differences. Look, as I said in my maiden speech in this place, I am proud to be London Irish. It's the community I grew up in and the community I want to pay particular tribute to today. I'm also proud to represent Beckenham and Penge, and with it, the only place in London, or the only constituency in London, with a Gaelic place name. Penge means edge of the woods. And we have a fantastic Irish community here. All four of my grandparents are from Ireland. I had two grannies from the south and two granddads from the north. And in particular, I think my granny would be very proud. I was wondering if she was still here when I was elected, what she would have done. I know for a fact she'd have gone to the 9 a.m. mass and then the 10:30 a.m. mass to make sure that everyone knew that her grandson had been elected as an MP. Look, a couple of years ago at the London Irish Centre, there was an exhibition curated by the national charity Irish in Britain, which for the first time I can remember really told the story of the London Irish community over several generations. The London Irish did as much as any community to build this great city. Irish navvies dug the underground, and then Irish construction workers rebuilt our city after the war. I know that today we have a fantastic construction industry in London with so many Irish people involved, and I know today we have the founder and members from the London Irish Construction Network, including Sean Daly and Frank O'Hare, here to watch the debates. And also, as it's been touched upon by the member for Newcastle and Underline, waves of thousands of young Irish women came to staff our hospitals at the birth of the NHS in this country. Those women, known as the Angels of Mercy, were often overlooked but essential to the NHS. And as someone who spent a lot of time in NHS hospitals as a teenager, especially the Royal London Hospital and the National Orthopaedic Hospital, my Irish dad would often look after me. We'd often encounter an Irish nurse, and before I could get treated, they had to establish how they knew each other. So it would begin with, what county are you from, then what town are you from, do you know so-and-so? And once they've made that connection, then you were free to get on with your day. And the Irish in Britain have maintained that relationship with the NHS ever since. And I'm really proud that there are more Irish staff in the NHS today than from any other European country. And even if we think more recently to a global health emergency, if we think back to COVID, it was an Irish woman in Professor Theresa Lamb at Oxford University who co-developed the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And then it was Margaret Keenan, an Irish woman from Enniskillen, living in Coventry and a former NHS nurse, who became the first person in the world to have the vaccine. So the Irish connection to the NHS is really deep, really strong, something that our community is incredibly proud of. But the exhibition also charted the history of how the Irish community were received here, and as has been touched upon today, that wasn't always easy. Alongside the Windrush generation and the West Indian community, it's important to remember there has been a lot of solidarity between those communities, but they were together often treated with suspicion and subjected to discrimination, including the signs which read "No blacks, no dogs, no Irish." But the London Irish community, and indeed the Irish community across Britain today, is a community transformed. It is confident in the contributions it makes to every aspect of life in Britain: economic, political, social, cultural. The Irish community helped to make our country the great place it is to live. I also want to extend that beyond London to the home counties as well. My honourable friend, the member for Reading Central, who is here today, I know can't take part in the debate, but has long been a champion of Irish contribution to Reading Football Club and to the Reading Irish Centre, which I've been to, and does incredible work to support the Irish community in Reading. As well as celebrating the contributions of the Irish community in Britain, I do just want to touch upon a campaign I started in the last few weeks, which is to secure justice for 13,000 survivors of Ireland's mother and baby homes living in Britain. We often need to remember the reason why lots of people left Ireland and decided to come to Britain. For some it was work, for some it was to be with friends and family, but in the case of thousands of women who were sent to these homes for the perceived sin of becoming pregnant outside of marriage, it was to escape these institutions and to escape the stigma that often came with having been in one. There are more than 13,000 survivors living in Britain today, both women and children who were born into them. They were subjected to some of the most horrific mistreatment and abuse in these homes. Women were used as unpaid labour. Their children were often forcibly adopted. I've named this law Philomena's Law after Philomena Lee, who I felt brought that story to a global audience in the film Philomena, where she's portrayed by Dame Judi Dench. We had an evening 2 nights ago. It was packed in a room in Parliament where survivors came and told their stories. It was incredibly powerful to hear from them the impact that it's having on them many years later. And I hope the government will listen to the proposals we're putting forward, because at the moment, if they accept the compensation payment that they've been awarded from the Irish government, but they are in receipt of means-tested benefits, they will lose that compensation. And hearing from survivors this week, it's actually become an additional burden for many of these women, now often in their 80s and 90s, some of them very vulnerable. Back to the Irish in Britain, I just want to say as well that the pride of the second-generation Irish community, which I am one today, and the growth of Irish culture and its importance right across Britain, we see that in the growth of the GAA in Britain, the Gaelic Athletics Association. And today that is not just people of Irish heritage who get involved, but people from all communities and all backgrounds who are participating in GAA. In language as well, the Irish language, and people adopting Irish names. My cousin Jordan and his partner Annie had a baby a couple of weeks ago, had a little girl, and I want to congratulate them. And they've named her Fia, which is Irish for wild, I think she'll be taking after her dad. And that's very common now, that people are very proud of their heritage, often several generations back. We see it in Irish music, in Irish culture. For years, where the Irish community was subjected to discrimination, we now have a period where you could turn on the TV on a Friday night and watch Graham Norton on BBC One and Derry Girls on Channel 4, and that's a representation of how far the Irish community has come. In trade unions and the labour movement, we see it as well. I think there was a period a year or two ago where the General Secretary of every single major trade union in this country was either first or second generation Irish. And there is no more visible transformation of the confidence of the London Irish community over time than in the growth of the Mayor of London's St Patrick's Day Parade. And I was very proud to take part in that with our Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, this month, where over 50,000 people joined that parade and participated in it. And London was awash with green. What makes, to sum up, what makes the Irish community so special for me is that it is an inclusive and welcoming community. At the entrance to that exhibition at the London Irish Centre 2 years ago, there was a plaque that read, Ar Scatha Héile a Warrenadina, which means, in the shelter of each other, the people live. It is an Irish proverb which sums up what makes our community in Britain so special and sums up neatly the Irish contribution to making our country the great place it is to live. Thank again my honourable friend, the member for Newcastle under Lyme, for securing this debate, and to everyone who has taken part.
Front benches, and I come to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Marie Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd also like to thank other honourable members for thanking the honourable member for Newcastle under Lyme for what has been a really lovely debate. And I'd like to start by saying this is my first time participating in this debate, and I've been quite surprised by just how genuinely lovely it's been, and the outpouring of love for the Irish community, both across these Isles and in the Republic of Ireland as well, and that's been really lovely to hear. I was slightly concerned that we'd be able to get through the debate without mentioning anything about Irish music, and so when the honourable member for Brent East started talking about Irish music, I was frankly relieved, because music was such a big part of my growing up, and when I discovered Irish music, I would say largely in a bar in France over many, many late nights when I was living there for a while, and it was Irish music that went on late, or should I say maybe early, I don't know. It was 1 o'clock, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning when it finished. But the sound of the fiddle, the just joyful music was just really amazing. And I've kept up that love of Irish music. And so I thank Ireland in particular for giving us that and making it so enjoyable. I was, however, slightly concerned, because not just because of the lack of description of music, but because I was slightly concerned that this is a debate about Northern Irish affairs, as well as the wonderful things about St Patrick's Day, which I also enjoy partaking in some Guinness as well. And then the honourable member for North Antrim spoke up and started saying that. Something that I wanted to say, that while there are some amazing things about Ireland and our relationship with Ireland and Northern, there are things that are not working quite as well as perhaps they could as well. And I think in a debate about Northern Irish affairs, we should also be acknowledging that. And so in that spirit, without wishing to take away some of the loveliness of this debate, I have a few things to say along those lines, and I hope honourable members will forgive me for that, but I think it's important to raise. But I do want to start by talking about something very current, which was something that happened earlier on this week, and I want to pay tribute to the police and to schools for their swift and professional response to a hoax that forced 9 schools to close in Northern Ireland this week, and teachers, parents, and pupils could, frankly, do without the disruption and the anxiety that's caused by such hoax situations. And they have other things they really do need to concentrate on, and the importance of education must never go amiss. So I'm really glad that things were able to return to normal quickly. Madam Deputy Speaker, Northern Ireland didn't vote to leave the European Union. 56% of its population wanted to stay, yet the decisions taken by the Conservative government in its implementation have caused nothing but problems, whether that be along the border, inside Stormont, or with trade. And whilst Northern Ireland enjoys access to the United Kingdom and the European Union's markets, the Conservatives' I'm afraid botched Brexit deal has been a disaster for the economy, hitting small businesses, farmers and fishers particularly badly. And while we welcomed the agreement of the Windsor framework, that deal is just a sticking plaster. It only exists to fix problems caused by the Conservative Party. What is really needed is something much more comprehensive and stronger. For Northern Ireland, as for Scotland, Wales and England, a closer relationship with our European allies will bring nothing but positives, but the Labour government is failing to take a pragmatic approach, in our opinion, to the UK's relationship with the EU. An easy step forward would be alignment on sanitary and phytosanitary standards and securing a veterinary agreement, which the Liberal Democrats are calling for as part of our plan to fix what we believe is the UK's broken relationship with Europe. So we're calling on the UK government to take the following 2 steps. Number 1, use the provisions within the UK-EU trade agreement to secure a veterinary agreement. And number 2, to enshrine alignment with EU SPS standards in domestic law. The EU already has 2 veterinary agreements in place, one with New Zealand and one with Switzerland. So this is not particularly novel and certainly not impossible to achieve. So it's difficult to understand what's holding the Labour government back in this regard. Fixing our relationship with Europe is the most important way to boost our economy and accordingly provide funding to fix public services. Yet Labour continues to rule out even simple steps like those outlined above, or indeed a youth mobility scheme, which is not, as the Prime Minister has recently suggested, a return to free movement, but a way to support our young people to develop the skills and experiences they need to help grow the UK economy as a whole. Ulster University's Economic Policy Centre has published a report which looks at what future skills employers will need and potential supply gaps. Northern Ireland needs more than 5,000 additional workers a year in order to grow the economy. A youth mobility scheme between the UK and EU is the perfect way to fix this.
Hear, hear.
These proposals will go a very long way to reducing the friction caused by the Brexit deal. In a world where the Labour government talks endlessly about the tough choices they need to take, a youth mobility scheme feels like an open goal. We just need Labour to lace up their boots and kick the ball into it. But we're also calling on the government to negotiate a new trade deal with the EU, with a new customs union at its heart. This will tear down red tape and boost our economy. Boosting the economy of both Northern Ireland and the whole of the UK means more revenue to fix public services which desperately need it, especially in the context of power sharing only being restored just over a year ago, following 2 years without a functioning executive during a cost of living crisis. The Liberal Democrats' 4-step roadmap provides a path for the UK to rebuild its ties of trust and trade with our European neighbours. And ultimately, Liberal Democrats want to see the UK back at the heart of Europe once more, setting the agenda from within rather than battling the constraints from without. Turning now to the welfare cuts announced last week and deepened further just yesterday, it's hard to overstate how strongly opposed to these cuts we are on these benches, and importantly, how concerned we are for what they mean practically for those impacted. Yes, we agree that we have to bring the welfare bill down and support more people into work. It's what's right for people and our economy. But the emphasis should be on supporting people into work. And we won't achieve that by slashing support for disabled people, some of whom will never be able to work, while others need PIP precisely so that they can continue to work. These cuts will have a disproportionate impact on Northern Ireland, particularly on those still living with the legacy of the Troubles, including victims with catastrophic injuries and those suffering from trauma-related mental health issues. My honourable friend for Lagan Valley has been highly vocal on this issue, describing these cuts as cruel and cowardly, highlighting that balancing the books should not come at the expense of the most vulnerable. Limiting eligibility for these people will do nothing to get more people into employment. Liberal Democrats have long said that the best way to bring down benefit spending is to fix health and social care, and to fix it quickly. This involves investing in preventative health measures by properly funding mental health support, especially for young people, and reforming social care. Surely this should be the priority. But the spanner in the works regarding healthcare reform in Northern Ireland remains political instability. Since devolution began in its most recent form 25 years ago, Stormont has been without a functioning government for almost 40% of the time. Stormont has had prolonged collapses in 2000, 2002 to 2007, 2017 to 2020, and most recently in 2022 to 24. It's the people of Northern Ireland, no matter what community they're from, who bear the brunt of a malfunctioning government. This never-ending cycle prevents the transformative action necessary to get Northern Ireland's public services and finances in order. Similarly, the cost of maintaining a divided society, estimated in 2016 to be at least £833 million annually, stems from duplicated services, additional policing and security expenses, and missed opportunities in investment and tourism. These unnecessary costs are a drain on the Executive's already stretched budget and can be far better used to improve healthcare, ease the cost of living and invest in essential services. My honourable friend for Lagan Valley held a debate on the reform of political institutions in Northern Ireland and Westminster Hall earlier this year, where she outlined the ways in which reforming these institutions will allow Northern Ireland to become more prosperous. Addressing the financial burden of division could unlock substantial funding for public services. We echo her calls for an updated assessment of the cost of division and a commitment from all parties to tackle the societal and financial costs of division. By doing so, not only can we ensure money is spent where it is needed most, but we can deliver a more inclusive, united and integrated community for everyone. Northern Ireland cannot afford to keep paying for a divided system where essential services struggle. In closing, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to underline that the Liberal Democrats are entirely committed to fairness, sustainability and a shared future for Northern Ireland. We call for real action on welfare support, movement back towards our European neighbours and a focus on tackling division and addressing issues in political institutions to boost public spending. I will end by saying that on these benches we have a positive vision for a more prosperous, inclusive and forward-looking Northern Ireland, one which I hope all members of this House will share, regardless of their views about how to get there.
I call the opposition spokesperson, Joe Mehy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, it's been an enormously enjoyable debate. I start off by paying tribute to the Honourable Member for Newcastle-under-Lyme. From our side, he's one of a depressingly large wave of new entrants into this place, but he's definitely marked himself out as being one to watch. And he produced, I think, a tour de force with a wide-ranging review of the historic community ties between the nations of the British Isles. And then the Honourable Member for Aberdeenshire North and Moray East, he gave us a very interesting history of St Patrick. I certainly learnt more than I was able to find in my Wikipedia search in preparation for this debate. It's an admission there. And then the Honourable Member for Luton South, a proud trade unionist, I think it's fair to say herself, and linking the, as did other members actually from the benches opposite, the strong connection between people of Irish descent and the trade union movement. So it's not all been good, but some of it has been. And then my honourable friend, the member for Romford, calling with great force, and my submission quite rightly, for a bank holiday to celebrate St Patrick. And were the honourable member for Newcastle-under-Lyme to put forward a proposal to celebrate both St Patrick and St George as bank holidays, then I, for one, would be one of the first to support him. He also mentioned the now defunct Order of St Patrick and his campaign to reinstate it, and that sounds like a very sensible thing to do. And made reference to the green of St Patrick, which from my research on Wikipedia, I learnt that actually St Patrick's colour was blue and not green, and this has been a development in the most recent centuries. So we might have to do a bit of work on that one. And then moving on to the honourable member for Brent East, who celebrates or boasted, frankly, of the largest Irish diaspora of any UK constituency, and highlighted, as did others, the huge contribution that people of Irish descent have made both to the local economy and to the local community. And then I'm going to skip to the honourable member for Beckenham and Penge, who spoke of the Tato diaspora and celebrated the London Irish community and made an eloquent plea for support for his campaign for Philomena's Law. And then I returned to the honourable member for North Antrim, who rightly described the contribution, the very, very significant contribution of Northern Ireland in this nation's fight for freedom in the Second World War, but also went on to recognise some darker aspects of the relationship between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland and the East-West relationship. And I don't think he was wrong to do that, actually, because if we're to have a mature relationship a relationship built on trust and respect, then we need to recognise each other's weaknesses as well as the sentimental bringing together of our shared history. So we should be clear-eyed. We should recognise failings in others as well as failings in ourselves in our shared history. And so I think, whilst I don't agree with absolutely everything that the honourable member says, there are aspects where I think, yes, you're quite right. We should be clear-eyed in this. And that takes me to St Patrick himself. Now, his day, 17th of March, in my family is forever linked with that of my father, Patrick Mayhew, who was himself half Irish. It was a red-letter day in my family's calendar. We always used to, wherever we were in the world, we'd always ring up or get in touch with my father to wish him a happy St Patrick's Day. But I learnt in preparation for this debate that St Patrick himself was, in fact, of course, a Briton. I knew that. What I didn't know was that he was, in fact, captured by Irish pirates and taken forcefully as a slave to Ireland. But whatever his experience there, he can't have hated it too much, because he then voluntarily returned to bring Christianity to Ireland and, of course, to drive out the snakes. So it is an early example of cross-border cultural mixing, and one that has gone both ways to our mutual benefit, because there now, in the latest census, suggest that there are more than 400,000 Irish-born who live in the UK. They are, of course, our closest neighbour by geography, by culture, by family connection, and, of course, by friendship. And this leads to a historic interlinking of our economies, which can be developed further. As of 2023, some £78.8 billion of trade flowed between our nations. The United Kingdom is Ireland's largest trading partner, and Ireland in itself is the 6th largest trading partner of the United Kingdom. But I cannot pretend, as the member from North Antrim rightly pointed out, I cannot pretend that there are not continuing economic and political challenges between our countries. So I do welcome the close political cooperation, east and west, and increasingly north and south, that we have at the moment. And I, from a personal perspective, I recognise some of the comments that the honourable member for Antrim mentioned about the difficulties of dealing with the Irish state back in the 1980s, because in those days I well recall the then Attorney General expressing considerable frustration at extradition applications being refused for typing errors and grammatical inconsistencies. But that's just a little historical note which I wanted to add to his account. But we had a UK-Ireland summit as recently as the 6th of March this year, and it was noticeable that the Taoiseach said this. He said, "We make the greatest progress when our two governments work together, particularly to support peace, prosperity and reconciliation on this island. Rooted in our commitments as co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement, I am confident that today marks a new chapter in the British-Irish relationship." And that's what this debate, amongst many others, is powerfully supporting. A bringing together of our two nations, a focus and a recognition of our shared history and our shared future. And may St Patrick inspire us all to further friendship and cooperation across these British Isles.
I now call the Minister, Fleur Anderson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure to respond to this debate establishing that St Patrick's Day is indeed a season that goes on beyond the day of St Patrick's Day. I begin by thanking the Backbench Business Committee for recognising the importance of allocating time to debate St Patrick's Day and Northern Ireland affairs, and congratulate the Honourable Member for Ealing Southall, who's from Dublin originally, and also the Honourable Member for Newcastle under Lyme, who is on the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee and, as he said in his opening very tour de force speech, has relatives from Northern Ireland. His wife is from Northern Ireland. Thank them both for securing this debate. Like them, and like so many people from across the United Kingdom, I have roots on the island of Ireland, as two of my grandparents are from Northern Ireland, from Eglinton and Newcastle County Down, and I'm married to a London Irishman. Not only that, I represent 2,500 Irish-born constituents and over 3,000 Irish passport holders in my constituency of Putney. The link between our isles is in St Patrick's life as well. There's a stained glass window of St Patrick's just outside the chamber, as he is the patron saint for Ireland and Northern Ireland, but he came from either Wales or could have had more Scottish MPs claiming that St Patrick came from Scotland, as we did in the recent debate as well. But his story is well known, and the good news which he brought to the island 1,500 years ago is celebrated by so many people from all communities across the island of Ireland around the world, who also are celebrating the contribution of people from Northern Ireland and Ireland to their communities all around the world as well. I'd like to thank all the honourable members of this House who've spoken this afternoon and highlighted the contribution of people from the island of Ireland to so many constituencies, and the work of many Irish centres as well. The work of the West London Irish Centre, Luton Irish Centre, Reading Irish Centre, and the personal memories that people have of St Patrick's Day past. The Order of St Patrick's Day, I will take away that mention as well. And the contribution by NHS nurses has been said so many times. There's the book that's been recently about NHS nurses begins with a nurse coming from Ireland and going to Putney, where she received a warm welcome and began her nursing career, and the contribution that so many people from the island of Ireland have brought in construction, music, culture, politics, hospitality and business. Like many honourable members, I've attended many St Patrick's Day events across London and Belfast this month, including the Anglo-Irish event at Stormont, the Champ event here in Parliament, and the debate organised by the honourable member for Strangford last Tuesday. I also attended the Mayor of London's St Patrick's Day celebrations in Trafalgar Square, which saw thousands of people taking to the streets and, whatever their background, becoming Irish for a day. So I'd like to thank the Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, for putting this on. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State was in the United States championing Northern Ireland to the US administration and Congress, as well as with wider Irish America, using his platform to promote Northern Ireland as a great place to live, to study, to work and to do business. And not only that, this government has taken this further with hosting the first ever St Patrick's Day reception in Number 10 last week, welcoming leaders from business, community, voluntary sector, arts, entertainment and having a Guinness bar. More broadly, I've had the pleasure of travelling to Northern Ireland for many years. This has begun in a personal capacity, of course, but I can now mix business with pleasure since my appointment as the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I like to pack as much as possible into my trips, and I've clocked up 26 visits and over 140 engagements since July last year. And what I've seen in every visit, that this reinforces for me the sense that Northern Ireland is exciting and thriving, that through its small and medium businesses, its world-class education, active community sector, thriving hospitality and tourism businesses, it is leading the way for the United Kingdom in so many ways. Key to supporting businesses and communities in Northern Ireland is our relationship with the Irish Government, as has been mentioned by many other members in this debate, which the Secretary of State and I have prioritised. Ireland is our closest geographical neighbour and our 6th largest trading partner. This commitment can be no more clearly defined than the Prime Minister and Taoiseach-led UK-Ireland summit, which took place in Liverpool earlier this month, the first of its kind. Building on our co-guarantorship of the Good Friday Agreement, the summit established new areas of cooperation on trade, on security, climate and technology, which will benefit people across the islands right up to 2030. And also started a new UK-Ireland Youth Forum. And I look forward to continuing engagement through other Good Friday Agreement forums, including the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, the British-Irish Council and the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly, which has also been mentioned this afternoon. I can think of no better example of our family ties working to best effect than the culmination of shared UK and Irish efforts in 1998 with the signing of the Good Friday Agreement. In these times of conflict around the world, the success of the Good Friday Agreement remains a globally respected example of conflict resolution. Ceasefires can be negotiated, peace can be won, and a route to maintaining that peace through politics can be found. Political courage and public support for that courage is essential. Although there remains more to be done, I am pleased to say that since the signing of the agreement, Northern Ireland has become and is becoming more and more every day a more reconciled place. And the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State and I are deeply committed to safeguarding political stability in Northern Ireland. Many across this chamber know all too well the importance of having a stable, devolved government in Northern Ireland. Through the Safeguarding the Union command paper, we are delivering on UK promises in respect of Northern Ireland. We're implementing the Windsor Framework and working towards an SPS veterinary agreement, as raised by the member for Chelmsford. Most recently, we've established Intertrade UK, and the East-West Council is meeting shortly. We've digitised the Belfast newsletter and rolled out a new lot of training materials for civil servants to ensure that they have a full understanding of the significance of the Good Friday Agreement and successor agreements. And the Secretary of State and I will continue to deliver this work with all of the community. Transforming public services is a priority for our work with the Northern Ireland Executive. We have recently announced £129 million of public service transformation funding to be spent predominantly on health, but also special educational needs and other projects. Sharing expertise, best practice, success stories. It's that work beyond funding where we can work together as governments to ensure that the Executive sees on every one of the opportunities to transform public services. Legacy is also a priority. It's a strongly felt issue which touches the lives of so many. The UK Government considers cooperation with the Northern Ireland Executive and the Irish Government to be essential in finding an agreed way forward. Madam Deputy Speaker, Northern Ireland is a unique and very special place. The warmth of its people, the creativity of its youth, the prestige of its industry, the charm of its landscape, the potential of its economy knows no bounds. It's a privilege to be the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and this Government and I will continue doing all we can to best improve the lives of each and every person who calls Northern Ireland home, from Kilkeel to Coleraine, from Balleek to Bangor, and from the Causeway to Clougha. Thank you very much.
I now come to Adam Jogee to wind up. Adam Jogee.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to all colleagues who've taken part in this debate, particularly the members from Mid and South Pembrokeshire, Hammersmith, Stafford, Staffordshire Moorlands, for their interventions. I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for North Antrim for taking part. I'm sorry he didn't like my speech. I haven't been called, and I quote, fuzzy, bleary-eyed, but I have been called warm, so I shall take that. He gave a speech very much in the spirit in which he tends to, and I'm sure his colleagues up at Stormont miss him very much indeed. I want to pay tribute to my friend from Aberdeenshire who gave a very good speech, shared some stories. I suspect there's a few more that we'll hear some other time. The Honourable Lady from Luton showed herself to be the tenacious champion for the Irish community in her constituency that we know that she is. The Honourable Member for Romford ought not to do away with his inner Irishness. Their blood is thicker than water. And he made a very strong case for the restoration of the Order of St Patrick and auditioned very well to be one of its first recipients. My father shares a birthday with him on the 17th of March, so we will be friends. The Honourable Lady from Brent gave a very good speech, may I say, sharing the story of the Irish in her part of the world. She did say, and I've got here, Madam Speaker, that Brent is where it's at. I don't think she's yet been to Newcastle under Lyme. I thank the Shadow Minister for his contribution and for putting the target on my back. What a great way to get my colleagues on this side to be my friends, but thank you nonetheless, and I pay tribute to his late father, who was, of course, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. I thank the Minister for her remarks and the Honourable Lady from the Liberal Democrats, who I think perhaps merged two speeches from this week in her contribution, but nonetheless we welcome it. Madam Speaker, this has been an excellent debate, and I look forward to all colleagues coming together in March 2026 for a similar one as we celebrate Northern Ireland and the relationship between our United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland.